Terrific get from Jay-Z to have a chat to Ross Lyon over the weekend. I've got my highlighter here, Kingy. I've printed it out, and there is so much content in this one piece. It is unbelievable. Could have almost done the whole show on it. Where were my first thoughts drawn? It was the amount of conditioning that St Kilda are trying to give to their fans this year. It's the amount of excuses of why this year will not be a successful year at St Kilda. Now, they don't, of course, say that, but read between the lines, and it is plain to see that it is going to be a really tough year for the Saints. Just in this one piece, and there was multiple spin-off pieces to this chat with Ross Lyon, but just in the main one, how many times do you reckon there was a reference to the side being young? There was 8. There was 8 references to the Saints being young. The Saints in 2021 had the second oldest list in the competition, a maxed out salary cap, blah, blah, blah. This year, they've begun with a similar age profile to Richmond after 20 changed in the past 2 years. Ross Lyon says, if you're looking for context, the Dockers fell off a cliff in 2016, went to the draft, and they're now the 10th year of a rebuild. That's the thing. There is no white flag, young or not. There's 8 references to the Saints being young, yet it's not a concession of a full rebuild. Now, this is their ladder position over the last 12 years. 9, 16, 18, 14, 9, 11, 16, 14, 6, 10, 10, 6, 12. Smack bang in the middle of football quicksand. They're going to be stuck there again. Now, I think they'll be more towards the bottom end of the ladder than the middle section of the ladder, but when they did sack Brett Ratton, they believed that they had a list that was capable of more than they had shown. Yet, essentially, they're saying to us, by the conditioning and the references to youth, which you're going to hear, and be onto it, everyone be onto it, how many times the Saints reference that they are young this year. So where are they at?
But they're the facts, aren't they?
Well,
they are young. I went down and had a look at them train, and the first thing I put was, wow, it's sort of jarring when you see them out there and think, gee, they're all skinny and young. Like there's a long while between this period now between when they're absolutely shaping.
So can I ask you why they're offering 17 million for Finn Callahan? Can I ask you why they're offering 1.7 for Sam De Koning? If they're going to tell us how young they are, then do it properly. Like actually.
But aren't they doing it properly though? You look at their draft picks the last few years. I think they've got in the main they've been good selections. Nasiah Wanganeen-Miller, total star, pick 11. They picked 10. Filippo showed some signs last year.
I'm a fan.
Darcy Wilson was a high pick in 23, and then 24. We saw what young Toby Trevelyan can do. The big go on the weekend.
They should have good picks. They've finished 9, 16, 18, 14, 9, 11, 16, 14, 6, 10, 10, 6, 12. Of course they've got good draft picks.
That's not all Ross's fault.
No, it's not. But don't give me the conditioning. Like this has been a long, long time. This has been a club that 2 years ago sacked a coach because they believed they were capable of more than they had shown. And now 2 years later, under Ross Lyon, after playing finals only a season or so ago and finishing 6th in his first year, they're now telling us they're young again. And I don't think they know where they are at. What's 1.7 a year for Finn Callahan or 1.7 a year for De Koning? Like, what are they doing?
Well, they've clearly got a lot of space in the cap, clearly, because they're so young and they're loaded with draft picks, which are on pretty much set figures, and none of them have broken. I mean, Nasiah we'll talk about later on. He's the first one to come under some heat with big deals from South Australia from both clubs. So that'll play itself out as the year rolls on. I just think it's being real. I don't mind clubs being honest with their fans. Hey, we may not have a great year this year. And we are very young. Enjoy the ride. We're still going to build. We're going to chase talent. If you're a St Kilda fan, you want to hear that they're being aggressive. The Kangaroos have tried this and been through this as well. When you're stuck down the bottom or in mid-table quicksand, you've got to take risks. You've got to throw these big offers out there in the hope that someone says yes. Chances are they're going to say no. It is impossible, really. It's almost impossible to drag one out of a club called. You know how hard it is.
How do they get out of this then? Is my question.
Well, work harder. Just got to keep working hard, make correct calls, make correct decisions. I mean, everyone said, and you and I included, you went with Genius earlier than anyone, but Hawthorn, when they tipped a few out to go younger, to give opportunities to those younger players and find out whether they particularly in the midfield, we're going to take them to the promised land. You get there quicker by doing this. You got Sam's on later on. I'll ask him. They had a plan that I think it was the first. Was it Plan 66? Was it called 60 or 66? It was called to punch 60 games in these young kids and find out which ones are likely to take us up the table in a hurry and which ones aren't. That's all they're doing.
Would Hawthorn have gone for Jack McRae? Like this just sort of confuses me a little bit with what they're at, and it's just a watch for me on how often
Well, they got Gunston back.
the club are going to. That's a good point. Are going to condition us with young.
But I think there's a difference between conditioning
8 times.
and yeah. Well, how many times are you allowed to say it?
Wow, in one piece, 8 times. Like, it's a bit obvious.
Would you give him 5?
Oh,
But I
I'll
think it's
give you
being
1.
honest. Is it being real though? Like, I get sick of clubs that lie and sell this. Oh, we're charging at the. If St Kilda came out and said we're charging at the finals in 2025, you'd rip them to shreds.
Well, they were there 2 years ago. Like,
Yeah.
why was it okay Why was it okay a year ago? Really, 1 season ago, and now it's just completely flipped, but not flipped enough to say we're actually rebuilding properly. Because just to me, they're confused as to where they are at. They want the excuse of being young. Yet on one hand, they're saying, well, who knows? We won 26 games in the last 2 years, which they kept referencing as well, whatever it is, 24 wins. And they keep mentioning that record. But it just gets you to where they've been for the last 12 years.
But they've maximised what they've got. This is the problem with Ross as the coach, right?
I agree with that, 100%.
St Kilda fans looking back now would say, you know what, we're probably better off winning 5 games than 12. And that's the harsh reality of this stupid system we've got. You haven't got enough flexibility with your own list to do trades and actually climb up the ladder quicker. You've got to go back to the draft. And they're not bad enough to be getting top 2, top 3 picks. They're getting the ones that are 8, 10, 11, those sorts of areas. So, look, I understand what you're saying, but I don't mind the honesty in it.
Now that is on the table, now that everyone knows how young they are, because they've told us 17 times in one article, let's not mention it again, because we know.
No, you've got to mention it.
So, no.
You have to mention
So watch on how, after a poor performance, how many times the Saints tell us that they're young. Okay, so just to watch on
But
that.
you get beaten as a young player. Young teams don't win, mate. They just don't win. This is how it is. I thought there were some signs on the weekend. I thought O'Connell was really good.
Yeah, no,
Number 45.
They got some good young players. I get it, but every team who has had a ladder finish over the last 12 years that is pretty ordinary is going to have some good access to the draft. So
what do you want?
Some good
All right,
players.
I'll put you.
Yeah.
Let's play Hutchie's Spin City. You're Ross Lyon. What do you want to tell the public? What do you want him to say?
A longer term plan of where this is going to go, and more strategy around the final destination of this, and more method into it. I'm confused. I don't need to see $17 million for Finn Callahan. I know he's 21, but that's just a panic move. I don't need to see 1.7 for a ruckman. I think it's more 3 years at the draft.
But you're not going to get him if you don't throw that sort of money out.
But it doesn't
you
matter.
cannot get a Finn Callahan.
Don't worry about getting them now. And
Don't worry about it.
they mentioned that throughout the piece. Like at the right time, we'll go bang and we'll get them. At the moment, St Kilda is not an attractive place to go and play. It's just not. Like, go and play at Marvel Stadium in front of 28,000 every week for a club that really battles and has been in the middle and has starting to lose players as well. It's not going to be an attractive place right now. So let's build absolutely properly through the draft. Let's go right and rip it right back. I would have traded Steele. I would have moved out some experienced players.
For him.
I wouldn't have. Well, it's a position though. Like, Hawthorn didn't get anything for Mitchell and O'Meara. They didn't get anything for them, but they moved them out to give other players an opportunity. There's no way I would have extended Max King by 6 years when he's already got 3 years left on a deal. I would have just bided my time to see whether he can play and what that looks like. So
The one
it
thing
needed
that
to
I
be
was disappointed-
whether they use the word rebuild or not. That needs to be acknowledged, and they need to acknowledge that the fact that they sacked a coach because they believed that their list was better was the wrong messaging for everyone, because they thought they were better. They thought they had underachieved when they had probably overachieved with the list that they had.
Yeah. Yeah, and you are allowed to make a correction on the run, right? So that is true, and then they've realised, no, hang on, we lack star power. There's only one way to get star power. That's pay massive money, which they've tried, or go back to the draft, which they're currently doing. The one thing that did disappoint me in that article, and a lot's been made of it, is you're not a serious football club if you're selling games.
Did you take that personally?
No. I think there's been a lot of clubs have proved that that's not quite accurate. And I think the number one is Melbourne over the last few years. They've sold games. Richmond sold games. Everyone sells them when they're in this far, stuck down the bottom of the table. You've got to bring the money in. You can't just go cap in hand to the AFL every year. I think that's just worry about your own backyard.
So just on that, that was the other thing I wanted to ask you. There was probably 4 cracks at other clubs in this piece as well.
I don't think you need to do that. I don't think you need to do that when you're in the position you're in. Head down, bum up. Don't worry about what the rest are doing.
A slight crack at Geelong with the partnerships that they have off-field. We aspire to be a Geelong with Cotton On partnerships, family and friends to play a role in independent commercial agreements. He went on to say that there's nothing illegal with what they're doing, but they aspire to be like that. There was a crack at Zach Toohey where he said he read the Biscuits article from Toohey. I think it says more about Toohey trying to make some money off-field than it does about Bolts. There was the crack at that one there with North and everyone else that has sold games. And there was also a crack at Damien Hardwick for his commentary around game style. I don't know. Ross is probably in the position where he doesn't care. And it's unbelievable content. It's compelling. Every time he speaks, we want to listen. And he has somewhat made St Kilda relevant when they are irrelevant. So he's a credit to him there. But you do wonder how the other clubs would feel about that.
The Geelong salary cap stuff, or the ability to manoeuvre money around, let's just call it that, is worth a discussion. I think we need to know as a footy fan base more about how that works and how that looks and who has these types of deals. You know, it's all well and good to say, yep, we've ticked them off, they're all legal. But for years we've been hearing about players taking unders down the road, and then we find out these sorts of things are happening. I think we're entitled to get more information on that.
Yes,
so we did our over and unders a couple of weeks ago. So I've tried to stay within that, but there are a couple of moves. My top 4 in no particular order will be Fremantle, GWS, Hawthorn, and I'm putting Geelong in there on what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. The next set of 4, Brisbane, Collingwood, Adelaide. Now, the 8th position's a little bit tricky, right? I had Melbourne in there, but of course, the whining and dining does have an effect on me.
Oh, of course it does.
And I would replace Melbourne with the Suns. So I have left out Port Adelaide, Carlton, the Dogs. Given their injury woes, the Dogs, my God. No Jones, Waitman, Treloar, Jamara, Ed Richards, calf on the weekend. So they're just having a horror stretch.
Tough first 6 weeks.
Yeah, and that's where it is, isn't it? It's all in the first 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So Freo, GWS, Hawthorn, Geelong, Brisbane, Collingwood, Adelaide, and Melbourne/Suns.
Okay.
Margarita and Capricciosa.
It goes a long way, doesn't it?
Fantastic.
Gets me every time.
I was speaking to someone, actually. I was speaking to someone who I couldn't respect more in football. And they sort of suggested,
Graham.
not involved in clubland, but they have suggested that if Gold Coast didn't make the 8 with the list that they have got, it would be one of the greatest underachievements in football history. And he sort of went through some of the names and the strength of the midfield and the depth and the young talent. And when you put
I've been telling you this for 3 years and you've been canning me.
No, but the performance hasn't been there. So you've been telling me they're coming and they're going to win. They're going to be in the premiership window, and it just hasn't. We've been wrong because it hasn't eventuated.
No, the window's now, you peanut. I said, wait, the window's coming.
When's the window coming?
No, I told you.
They have to be. The Gold Coast.
Now I'm on board.
They have to be. They were in there last year. I had them in my 8 last year because they had the softest draw in human history, and they couldn't put their white shorts on and win away from home. So they're in there again. I'm going again. Same goes for Adelaide.
They're in there.
Yeah, they're in my 8. At some point, Adelaide are going to actually have to live up to the talent that is on their list and live up to expectations. So I've got Adelaide, I've got Gold Coast in.
You're getting a lot of feedback here for leaving the Swans out. I just think it's such a demoralising result to have to come back to do another pre-season, to get all the way back to that same opportunity where they were humbled again. You disagree?
I disagree. Yep. You can have your say. What's your top 8 looking like? None of us will be right. 1300 736 736.
I've taken the Geelong feedback on board, right? Because we had the over and unders and they were under 13.5 wins. So I had to check myself there. I'm probably a bit hard on Geelong, given the fact they won 15, 10, 18, 16 the last 4 years.
Yeah, no.
You have to back them in, don't you?
I didn't want to make that mistake again. Just considering how many games they play at home, they've got the best coach in football. I mean, there's an extra... Just the coach probably gets you an extra 3 wins. Then their top end is as strong as anyone. Can they hold up through the midfield, where there's lacking a little bit of depth, will be an interesting fact. But the other question I've got for you, what would be the biggest underachievement from a team if they didn't play? So I reckon Gold Coast. If Gold Coast don't play, and I was influenced by a person I respect in football to suggest that. But like if Carlton didn't make the 8, I know they've got a couple of injuries, but Vossi did an article over the weekend. He said they're basically in pretty good health. Like Newman hurt, and now Jagger Smith hurt. So that was prior to that injury, but they're in good health. They've been focusing on speed and power. If the Blues didn't make the 8, that's carnage.
Oh, let's be
absolute
real.
Carnage.
If Fremantle didn't make the 8,
okay, Fremantle,
it'd be massive. If Hawthorn didn't make the 8. Like the talk about the Hawks is like they're almost. I know we've got the coach on soon, but it's like they're almost going to just rinse and repeat. Like there would be. It's a huge story. Yeah. Collingwood for the directional stuff you've touched on a few times. Adelaide for the fallout.
Adelaide
there.
Carnage.
I mean, there's some that would sack coaches. There's some teams if they miss the 8. Freo missed the 8. Thanks for playing, Mr. Longmuir. If Adelaide missed the 8, thanks for playing.
Yes.
Bulldogs, yep. Port Adelaide have already pulled the trigger. Melbourne, what happens if Melbourne miss the 8 again? Are we on a reset, a rebuild? What are we doing here?
Absolute can't. That's why this season, I mean, they're all great. That's why this season is completely compelling, because we're all thinking there's 14 teams that should be playing, and if they don't, it's going to be carnage. On my agenda is an article that our man Callum Toomey has written a couple of days ago on afl.com.au, just about Gold Coast has interest in Geelong Premiership player Sam De Koning. Now, my question to you is, and my opinion is, that Geelong should seriously consider letting him go. If Gold Coast are interested in this, and every club hates losing players, right? Every club hates losing players. But the but is that it's to Gold Coast, who have 3 first-round draft picks this year and have got history in paying significant overs for players that they want to get, because draft picks mean nothing to Gold Coast. So 6 and 23, essentially, there were some swaps and all of it. I get it for Rioli, who's 27. What could Geelong get for De Koning from Gold Coast? They could get all 3, I reckon. I reckon they could nearly get all 3.
What?
They've given 6 and 23 for a 27-year-old halfback flanker. What could Geelong get for a 202-centimetre key position player, probably back? I'm sure they're going to play him back where they should play him. What could they get? Could they get all 3? And if they could get all three, yeah, this is Gold Coast we're talking about. And we're not dealing with other clubs who rate draft picks. Gold Coast couldn't give us stuff about draft picks. They couldn't care less. They gave up pick 6 for Rioli, who's a halfback flanker. I think they could get all 3. And if they could get all 3, is it better for Geelong to trade him out rather than keep him?
Well, they gave away 6 because they had the academy.
Yeah, there's more academies coming. There's more academies coming for Gold Coast. So it doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying.
Well, they're not going to give away 3. I mean, that's Jeremy Cameron areas. This guy's not Jeremy Cameron.
I know that, but Dan Rioli's not. Dan Rioli's not worth pick 6 and 23.
Well,
if you could get 2, of them,
that's very high.
It's not. Of course, it's high. 100% it's high when you're dealing with any other club. We're dealing with Gold Coast.
They're not going to let you near any list management roles in the future if you give away 3 picks for Sam De Koning.
Kingy, they gave away pick 6 for Dan Rioli. He's 27. He plays on the halfback flank.
But then they matched pick 9 to get Leo Lombard.
But they're doing that again. There's more
giveaway.
coming. If you read the piece, there's more academy players coming. The picks don't matter, is the point for Gold Coast. They don't care. They've got everything they need. But they do matter for Geelong, who, it's been a struggle for them with the success that they've had to get access to these picks. They're worth their weight in gold.
Would you do, as Cody's pointed out here, De Koning for Rowell, straight swap?
Oh, that's a really good one. It's a really good one.
Who wins that trade?
Oh,
I'd say Rao's a better player.
Rao's a better footballer, but in terms of what is rare, what's rarer, you're going to be able to replace Matt Rao more so than you're going to be able to replace De Koning, who needs a big year, by the way. Needs a big year.
That's Twitter poll.
That's Twitter poll worthy. But I just think clubs are obsessed by keeping players. I think clubs need to be more open to losing them if it is for the betterment of the club. Like the Saints worked out well with Battle. I'm sure of it. I'm sure it's going to work out fine. They would have loved to have kept him, but he goes. I know it's free agency and all of that. I get it. But it's going to work out better for St Kilda than keeping him. This is a great opportunity for Geelong if they can manufacture a trade with Gold Coast. I reckon they get at least 2 first-round picks.